Hey everyone, this is FIDE Master Kostya Kavutskiy here for Chess.com, and today I wanted to go over something that's really critical for anyone who wants to get better at chess, and I do mean anyone. Okay, so if you're an aspiring chess player and you want to get better, you need to learn how to learn from your own games. Okay, you need to play a lot of training games against serious opponents and try to win. And you need to then go over those games, either with a friend who also wants to do some chess analysis, or with an engine, or just by yourself. But what's important is that you find your mistakes and you try to understand why you made those mistakes, and you definitely look for an improvement. And that's important because although no two chess games are really ever the same, you are going to come across sort of familiar positions that you've not exactly had before, but maybe you've had a similar kind of position before. And by analyzing that previous position in depth, you then have this knowledge and experience that you can use in your future games. So today I wanted to show you guys an example of how going over one of my own games really helped me in a future game and was really beneficial to my own chess understanding. Okay, so in this position here, I was playing white against a very good opponent who I believe is now an international master. And as you can see, white's knight is attacked by this pawn here, and I have to figure out what to do about this threat. So during the game I spent a lot of time and I was able to find the best move. Actually, I found the best move really quickly, but I was not able to bring myself to play it. So if you want, take a couple minutes, pause the video, and try to see if you can find the best move and evaluate what's going on in the position. Okay, so the best move here is rook takes d6. White sacrifices the exchange in order to, well, do a couple of things. Basically, white just removes black's best piece. Hopefully you guys paused your videos and tried to figure out what was going on. And if you did, then hopefully you took stock of which pieces are good and which pieces are bad. And in this position, the knight on d6 is absolutely the best piece on the whole board. The first thing is that it's attacking this critical c4 pawn, right? And this is a huge weakness for white, and if white loses this pawn, then their whole position is just going to collapse. Furthermore, the knight is also controlling the important e4 square, and overall has a very good presence in the center. Black has to take the rook, and now knight h5. So the threat is knight f6 check. But the point of this exchange sacrifice was not just to threaten to win the exchange back. Actually, what it does is gives black this weird pawn structure, which actually makes the three pieces on the queen side quite terrible. Like, this bishop is never going to be able to get out. And if it ever comes to a6, well, okay, it hits the c4 pawn, but it doesn't really do anything from there. White's bishop is going to stay on d3, defend the c4 pawn, and black's bishop on a6 isn't actually doing anything. Next is this knight. The knight cannot go to b4. It can go to c7, but then what? Right? It has to go to e8, and then it might not be able to go to f6. And then if it goes to g7, where does it go from there? And finally, the rooks are disconnected. Black has an extra rook for a minor piece, but this rook on a8 is not doing anything, and it's going to take several moves before it gets into play. So why is all of that important? Well, it means that white is up a lot of time, right? Black needs 4 or 5 moves to coordinate their pieces, and white only needs a few moves to start attacking these pawns on the king side. So white's next moves are like bishop d3, and possibly knight g3, maybe king f2, bishop d2, and bringing the rook to the h-file. And once white starts attacking these pawns, they're just going to fall because black doesn't have any pieces that can really protect them. And if white wins these two pawns, then obviously they'll have a completely winning position. I mean, a bishop and two pawns, two connected passed pawns, is definitely worth more than a rook, especially here since all of white's pieces are already coordinated very well. So I'll give you guys like a sample variation here. Let's say king e7, bishop d3, knight c7. Black cannot even think about defending this pawn. White can just play knight g3 next and take it. And white plays knight g3, bishop a6, knight takes, and e4. And as you can see, black has made a couple of moves but is nowhere near untangling. This bishop is still doing nothing, this knight is very passive, and this rook is still stuck in the corner. Even if black plays this move here, b5, white can simply just ignore this threat. You know, you can just play king f2, takes, bishop c2, and these pieces still cannot get active. So white is probably going to win this pawn next. This pawn is hanging. White can take that pawn at any time. I think strategically white has a completely winning position. And so I checked this with the computer, and indeed it was winning. And during the game I thought it was a really strong possibility, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. It was very unclear. You know, I didn't want to risk losing by sacrificing material, and I didn't go for it. So, you know, later I was pretty upset because if I had played this continuation, I most likely would have won the game against this, you know, very strong opponent. But instead we ended up just making a draw. But something good definitely came out of it, is that I analyzed the position and I learned a lot about the importance of piece coordination and how that sort of relates to the sort of like subjective value of the pieces, right? Even though black technically has more material, this rook in the corner is definitely not worth as much as, you know, one of my pieces, either this bishop or this knight, right? Because the rook is not doing anything, but my pieces are becoming active. So I learned a lot about relative piece value. But this new understanding really helped take my game to a new level. And I want to show you guys a game that I played, I think either 1 or maybe even 2 months later. So this is a game I had 2 months later, and I was playing white here. And ironically, I was actually playing against the very same opponent who I had in the previous example. So if you want to find the winning move here for white, I strongly recommend you pause the video. It's a very complicated position, so take your time, try to figure out what's going on, try to find the winning continuation for white. Okay, so the winning move here is rook takes d6. Isn't that great? The same move, rook takes d6, was the winning move in both examples. And here, I'm glad to say that I did play this move, and I ended up winning this game. Okay, so the difference between the two examples here is that, of course, in the previous example, there wasn't a whole lot you needed to calculate, right? It was definitely a strategic exchange sacrifice. I gave up the rook for the knight to ruin black's structure, make all of their pieces bad. It was very much a correct decision on sort of positional considerations, thinking about the position abstractly and not in concrete moves and not in variations. This, on the other hand, is a tactical sacrifice, right? This sacrifice is based on calculating very accurately and then evaluating the resulting position. So black pretty much has to take this rook, and now knight takes e5 check. And the tactical point behind all this is that by getting black's rook to d6, it is now hanging, and after the black king moves somewhere, I'm going to take on g4 and open up this discovered attack on the rook. So pretty much in all lines, what's going to happen is white is going to be down in exchange, but have this very strong mass of pawns in the center. And because of that, and because black's king is going to be much more danger than white's king, this gives white practically a winning position. So I'll show you guys a few examples to sort of explain here what's going on. So king g8 was played in the game, knight takes g4, and now rook g6. So of course I have to calculate all these moves before going to the sacrifice, right? It is a combination, and when you play a combination you have to calculate all the possibilities. And I already saw that I would have this move knight f6 check available to me. So now, for example, of like king f7, then I can play bishop takes h5. And then king f6, I give this check, and I take the rook, and I give this check here. So black has an extra knight for the moment, but next move I'm just going to take this knight on h3, and obviously white is completely winning with these pawns on d5 and e6. The move played in the game was king g7. And now white can play knight takes h5 check with a winning position because, again, you know, black has a rook for a bishop, but these pawns in the center are extremely strong. And the reason I was able to evaluate this correctly was because I analyzed the game before, and I realized that, you know, when you're down in exchange, if you have sort of these strong pawns and very good piece activity, then oftentimes that's way more than enough compensation, and it justifies the sacrifice, right? And here I found this move queen e5, which is quite strong. And the point is I'm attacking the knight on e7. So just to show you guys how the game went, my opponent played rook g1 check, king d2, knight g6, and here you can really see the difference in king safety. My king is completely safe because it has this pawn shelter, and black's king is very vulnerable to the attack of my queen and knight. So now knight takes h5 check, king h6, queen g7 check, king g5, and here a winning move would have been knight f4. I ended up winning this game later, but it was much more complicated than if I had just found this simple move here. The point is that after black takes, white takes with a check, and black's king does not have a safe spot. Like king takes f4, queen f6 check, and I win the knight next. So then white will be up material, have this raging attack, and also these two extremely good pawns in the center. So I hope that was a really interesting example for you guys of how going over your games can and really does help, right? And it improves your understanding of the game, and it gives you some sort of familiarity with the positions you get in the future. So because I analyzed so deeply the position that I shown you guys first, the positional exchange sacrifice, it allowed me to really find the winning move here, which was, again, oddly enough, rook takes d6, and play it with confidence because I knew very well that I would definitely have more than enough compensation for this sacrifice. With that, I wish you guys good luck, and I hope you guys go over your games and learn a lot and use that knowledge in your future battles. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you around on Chess.com.